What's up, guys? I'm going to be going over today's severe weather threat here across portions of the lower Ohio Valley, including portions of central and southeast Illinois into Indiana and northwest Ohio. Here is the tornado forecast for today across the SPC area outlook. They have the 5% tornado risk here highlighted across portions of the south, which includes most of all of Arkansas, southern southeast Missouri, southern tip of Illinois, western Kentucky, Mississippi, and then also into portions of Louisiana and northeast Texas. Then they also have the 2% tornado risk that kind of extends all on the frontal boundary. The other boundary, not the very warm, moist, warm frontal boundary that we'll be talking about here pretty soon across southern Illinois, but the other boundary itself to the north that overlaps that boundary, which could indicate 2% tornado risk with some maybe some possibility of rotating storms along that front, that cold front that pushes through. But it's no guarantee. That's why there's a 2% tornado risk issued there, because the low level jet does increase after overnight. So there's the possibility on that. So we got some current storms here across portions of southeast Missouri. They're currently moving northeast fairly quickly. Some heavy rain there that's going to probably come into portions of central southern Illinois pretty soon. There it's going to be tracking into portions of St. Louis, Missouri area. That's not going to be a severe weather threat today, but just north of that warm frontal boundary where that 5% tornado risk is, there's going to be some heavier thunderstorms, some heavy winds, heavy rain, maybe some possibility of some small hail. The warm frontal boundary on some of the forecast models that do set up today, anywhere Marion, Illinois, and south, kind of just like this. There's going to be back surface winds feeding into that boundary later on today, wherever that boundary is set up on, and there could be the possibility of some rotating supercells south or along that boundary later on today, anywhere across southeast Missouri into the southern tip of Illinois and western Kentucky, anywhere after 1 p.m. into midnight. So going over actual mesoscale details and analysis here, data and the visible satellite, looking at some clear skies down there currently. But this area right here looks to be the main targeted threat for some possibilities, some maybe a few rotating supercells if they can materialize and realize the environment they're in when it heats up. Some decent low level wind shear, low level jet at 925, 850 millibars does increase after the evening hours. So it could be like 2 hours right before sunset. There could be a few tornadoes of the the environment does materialize like it's trying to. Kind of just going over some details here on the SPC meso-analysis page. So you got some surface winds backed here. You see that they got the main low back here. You got somewhat of a meso-low across southwest Missouri. There's some back and forcing southeasterly, easterly winds kind of being pulled into there. Some of the models did pick up the chances of maybe a meso-low across southwest Missouri, a secondary low, a very weak spin that could enhance back to low-level winds, and then just near along that south of that boundary. So if we look at the theta E, actually no, let's look at the temperature and dew points here. See, there's some 70 dew points already feeding into eastern Oklahoma, northwest and western portions of Arkansas, and the boundary where it sets up here is going to be somewhere south of Marion, Illinois into southeast Missouri, Boot Hill, which is some of what the forecast models were showing up on. So like the RFS model here did show that warm frontal moist boundary here. Across the area, you can see the dew points right here are pulling right there. 60 plus dew points north of it. They're kind of just low 60s, but along that warm frontal moist boundary in there between the lower to mid upper 60 dew points south of it, you can see winds are back in southerly or southeasterly surface winds. Wherever the winds are back in more southeasterlies or southerly or south-southeasterlies into that boundary and storms have developed, it could become rotating supercells or rotating low top thunderstorms that could produce chances of maybe a brief tornado or two. Strongly dependent on how much instability does develop across the area, of course. In surface-based CAPE, which some of the models indicate some low chances of surface-based CAPE for the most part, but I think they could be underplaying it because looking at the current visible satellite here, there's definitely some flare in there, but I am worried about the updrafts of the current blowing up thunderstorms north of that boundary that's creating some haziest effect on the upper level cloud cover here with the anvil spreading over those thunderstorms developing this morning. It could overlap into southeast Missouri and southern Illinois. That could tamper the instability today across the area. But we'll kind of just watch those details and see how that does develop. But you do have some clear skies there across southeast Missouri, the Boot Hill, into southern Illinois and western Kentucky. It's basically a 50-50 chance if storms can develop in this environment. If it does stay clear, instability does develop, moisture does feed into that boundary and sets up there. It could maybe have the chance of some rotating thunderstorms south of Marion, Illinois, into the Boot Hill, Missouri, western extreme Kentucky, southwest extreme Indiana for the most part, but it's not a guaranteed chance. It is a 50-50 high conditional threat, so it's conditionally dependent on clearing, instability, moisture, and wherever that boundary is set up for surface back winds. Overlooking the entire environment here across portions of Arkansas into the Boot Hill, Missouri, southern Illinois, there is completely clear skies across most of Arkansas today, so that could enhance the threat down there, but we're also watching northeast extreme Texas, southwest Arkansas, where there could be a few prefrontal supercells develop out ahead of the front or the dry line intersection with the cold front and load over there to kind of enhance some of the back winds. So there could be a chance of some tornadoes down there, and it could be locally higher based on how things do develop, but we'll kind of watch that and see how that does develop. But the overall area is pretty clear this morning. You see where your thunderstorms are developing and pushing north-northeast across portions of southwest Missouri, and kind of just riding north of that boundary. So we'll see how those upper level clouds and those anvils develop off those thunderstorms and interfere with the possibility of tampering some instability into the environment that's trying to stay unstable today. Moisture is definitely increasing as this just updated SP's mesoanalysis, so there's definitely 60 dew points across a large area today, for the most part. But I'm still currently looking at some of these models here, like the NAM3 kilometer model here, showing instability, some curvature in those photographs, and watching where the best storms are going to develop. But it is so that more and moist boundary there is set up across portions of central southern Illinois into southern Missouri, and Arkansas having the best chances of some deep moisture, low level moisture conversions there. Here's your 850 millibar jet going into the evening, which is 2322Z. You see it does definitely increase across southern southeast Missouri and northeast Arkansas, and then going into the evening hours, near dusk and early overnight, you can see the 850 millibar jet does increase across portions of southeast Missouri and southern Illinois, which did indicate possibility that those storms are definitely strong across that area. They could be rotating thunderstorms at this point, maybe a few supercells or embedded tornadoes for the most part within the line. It's no guaranteed, but the low level jet does increase, and there's the possibility that that could happen, especially along the warm moist boundary. It does lift a little bit north, but there is some curvature in some of those photographs there across the area. Low CAPE, low LCLs, high wind shear. So there's the possibility it could be a few tornadoes even into the overnight hours across portions of central southern Illinois and central southern Indiana and the Boot Hill, Missouri. But the chances of a prefrontal supercell develop out ahead of that line is basically like a 40-60 chance, because waiting for the wave to hit, do the storms actually materialize and hold organized strength, waiting for the low level wind shear to develop and get strong low level wind, the upper level jet to increase after the evening hours, at that point going to overnight hours. So just kind of strongly dependent on that, watching how that stuff does develop across the area. But for the most part, I would definitely say that this area south of that boundary, where it does develop, will have the best chances right here for a possibility of a tornado there. But other than that, that's all the details I have for today's severe weather setup. Stay tuned for later updates, and we'll go from there.